Great. Thanks for joining us today. It's good to see you over there at the Vatican.
Good to
Um,
be.
I want to start with asking you something about the piece that Archbishop Charles Chaput wrote for the Wall Street Journal. And in it, he said that the more Synod fathers claim there's no doctrinal change coming, the more some of the other synodal fathers should worry about this. That you say one, they're saying one thing, but something else is going to happen. Is that the prevailing atmosphere over there?
I think among a certain group of bishops here, yes. But ask a bishop on one day, or ask one bishop on one day, and he'll tell you one thing. Ask the same bishop on the next day, and he may tell you something else. There's this joke which you've probably heard, but it's the husband, which I think that the Archbishop actually made in his piece. The husband who comes home and he swears that he's not, that he's not having an affair or something, and then the wife is like, "Well, are you cheating on me?" So I get the Archbishop's point, but at the same time, I think I don't know. What I'm hearing is that when a parade of bishops comes in front of the media, as they have over the past couple of weeks, and says repeatedly that doctrine will not change, and that's what we heard again today by Archbishop Mark Coleridge of Brisbane, Australia. He said, there's no way that any doctrine is going to change, but for him, he'd like to see a new language start to emerge so that the church does not seem to be alienating people.
Well, I want to refer to Cardinal Reinhard Marx's comments about the Eucharist and how he's really pushing for communion for divorced and civilly remarried Catholics, and he's saying that the Eucharist is not a prize for people who are perfect, but it's really a powerful medicine and a nourishment. Now, some people get confused because that would be a real change in practice. That would not be a change in doctrine, correct?
Well, that's certainly how Cardinal Marx sees it, and almost all of the German bishops seem to be in agreement with him, save Cardinal Muller, who's the prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. He's been holding a pretty hard line on this because he's concerned that if you do change the practice, that has implications for the doctrine and that it could encourage Catholics to essentially become soft on the issue of the permanence of marriage. However, it was reported yesterday night, actually, that Cardinal Muller had given an interview in which he said that in some extreme cases, he would not rule out the idea of allowing, some, maybe a few kinds of Catholics in certain situations to return to the sacrament. So I think that was actually a pretty significant development. It's possible that the report was wrong, but it is true that when the German bishops produced their response to the working document, and that includes Cardinal Muller and Cardinal Marx and all of the German-speaking bishops, they submitted that report without any dissent, so they all agreed completely with it.
Well, Archbishop Zupich from Chicago has also said that he can see a road for people who are divorced and remarried to, it's a matter of conscience, he says. And he also applied that to homosexual Catholics also, that some people might think are barred from communion. He sees a road for people as a matter of conscience. Is that the same thing that Cardinal Marx is saying?
I'm not sure if they're in complete agreement, but I was at that press briefing, and Archbishop Supich, who, by the way, is going to be my boss in about 2 weeks.
No, that.
So, yeah, I mean, I can't speak for him, but what he said, the note that he hit during that press briefing was that he thought it was very important for the church to treat its people like adults. So it's not just that you have church teaching alone, and that's the only way that people make moral decisions. There's also the question of conscience. And it's a very thorny theological question, one that hasn't been treated that much at the Synod, but he thought it was very important to bring that up at least. And I think that's a point that a lot of Synod fathers are going to start hitting as this third and final week of the Synod develops.
Right, it is coming. It is coming to an end, and one of the things Cardinal George Pell has been saying is that he was worried in the beginning that the whole system was rigged, and that the outcome was already a matter of fact. Now he says that he thinks that that issue has been substantially addressed, and there's no ground to worry about that. That this is an open forum. Again, is that the prevailing attitude over there?
I think it is really. Last week you probably heard about this. There was a letter that leaked that was signed by as many as 13 cardinals, some say 11, some say a dozen, who knows. Cardinal Pell was one of the people who signed that letter, raising questions about the synod process. That was addressed by the Pope himself on the second day of the synod, when he basically said these new procedures, which essentially mean there's a lesser emphasis on large group speeches and a greater emphasis on small group discussions, that was something that the Pope himself approved. One of the things that I think most synod fathers are saying is that this synod experience is much freer. It is much more open. The conclusions are not predetermined at all. Bishops can get up and say whatever they want. And in fact, when they have the large group discussion, there's a morning portion where they read these prepared texts. And in the afternoon, they are encouraged not to read from prepared comments, but to speak freely off the cuff to respond to what they heard earlier. So I think that the Synod, by and large, believes that this is a new process, and in some ways it's harder because it's different. And then I would take Cardinal Pell at his word that he feels that his early concerns have been addressed.
Okay, well, we'll be watching the process as it works its way through the final week, and we'll be checking back with you. Grant, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you, Ed.